Development Corporation regular meeting today is Monday, August 12th. It is 6:36. I'd like to establish quorum. We have Ray Lambert, Jason Talley, David Schroeder, Mike Sherry, and myself, so we have a quorum. I'd like to have lead us an invitation, if you don't mind, please. So if you'll stand, followed by a pledge of American and flag. Well, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day and the blessings that you've given us through your Son, Jesus Christ. We pray and ask that you use each one of us to serve you in your way and your wishes. Our prayer is not for what you can do for us, but what we can do for you. Lord, use this meeting to conduct your business. In God's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Citizen comments, is there any citizen comments at this time?
I'll let you know.
Mayor, would you do an introduction for us,
Yes,
please,
I sure
ma'am?
will. I'd like to introduce our new city manager, Reggie Winters. I think all of you met him except Mr. Boyd.
I didn't get the last name, I'm sorry.
Winters?
Winters. Hi,
Yeah.
Mike Harry.
Great.
Nice to meet you.
We're looking forward to you joining the city
Thank you.
and serving with you as we bring the city forward.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. Moving on to old business, you have the minutes in your packet from the regular meeting from July the 1st, 2013. I'll give you a moment to peruse these, please, and then I'd like to entertain a motion to approve them, please. We'll go ahead and dispense with the reading of the minutes. Anybody have any questions or corrections to the minutes?
I'll move that we approve the minutes from the July 1st, 2013 meeting.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from July 1st, 2013 meeting. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All approved, all opposed, same sign. Moving on to the treasurer report review, Mr. Talley.
Yes, does everybody have, okay, on the back side of this, of course, you'll see the check detail for the month of July, and this shows the checks that were written and cleared. We're printing off a little different summary because the memo section is a little more clear on this report so that you can see what the service was for. If you have any particular questions, I'll be glad to answer those on that. I'll point out a couple of things. Jeffrey Shaw was the attorney that we had to pull together to do the closing on the two properties of Hammer Exploration and Hammer Isolation. Howard Berger was out of the country at that time, so we were able to get him to do the closing documents for us. Olsen Deers and Witten, that was shredding at the industrial park.
We have on the front page the check 3627 Freddie Ortiz, and then above is the split. Did that go to the, what was the, did the coincidental numbers are the same? 3626 and 3627, that's a split of
but that one's split. In other words, when it says split there, like a 3628,
Different.
well, that's a voided check, that 3627. Is that the one you have a question about?
Or was it, is it deducted, so was it actually a check that was written?
No, no.
Okay.
It probably was, but it was voided, so it's
Okay.
zero. And really, we probably just need to take that entry off of there.
No problem.
Really, it should have just showed a void check.
It sure looked a lot different out there since all the spreading.
And then if you notice, like L and M, when we have cleaning, those dates are the 3 dates for the cleaning, which would be $50 a piece, or whatever the total. And then it includes probably one more date because they charge $50 for cleaning of their warehouse. And then when one check is written, of course, we're splitting it out, showing you what category it goes to. Okay, so that's the detail for the month of July. Since our last meeting, that goes all the way to the end of July.
One question, but where it shows the negative balances in there, the account never did go over.
No, no. This is just the software.
Okay.
So when you look at the total balance, that's going to be the balance. Okay, then attached, we also show the money market account in terms of deposits made. This is the one pager right here. Should be attached as well. One of those, of course, you see the Whitmire transaction there. That was for the real estate that's closed on at the Veterans Park property. You see sales tax deposit. Debt service, of course, would be the existing note that we have on the business park. And then, of course, that 890, the total there is the balance as of that date. This balance has been elevated more than that because of the recent transactions. We had 2 transactions that sold for, what, 142 a piece, in that range?
367.
Plus the lease money we received for 187, so you would add those totals. They're not reflected here because we just cut it off at the end of July. Okay.
So we collected the oil money and the closing, it was so wrong.
Right, 2 closings. So now when you look at the total money market balance, you have a total that's in the range of 1.3 with all those closings included. And then this report is a report you've seen before, just showing you, the first column, of course, shows you year-to-date tax collections, sales tax received. We have the transactions for the property sales broken out. The reason you don't see the property sales for the 2 industrial park sales to Hammer, Exploration and Isolation is because those occurred in August. Okay? And just kind of cruise through that and see if there's any questions. Actually, they probably are in here. Now that I see it, the legal fees for that transaction was put in here because that was paid outside of closing.
Yeah, it took them quite a while to go ahead even
Yeah,
after.
but the actual money from the 2 closings, you won't see the total in there just yet, but it is in the money market account. Any questions on that?
Good job, Jason.
It's good.
As usual, very good job.
And it's a whole lot easier tracking this stuff now since we've got all this in line items. It make a lot of sense. That's it. That concludes my report.
Thank you, well done. We're gonna go to the committee report section. You have anything else
No.
about finance committee report? Since Mary Helen's asking for the personnel committee, let me report to you that, we have called upon the applicants that met the criteria that we wanted. There was a couple of them from out of state, there's a couple of them from in-state. What the determination was, if we were going to request the two that more local to come down first, and we are going to have a personnel meeting on May the 22nd, August the 22nd, and that's a Thursday. And prior to the personnel committee meeting, what we're going to do is have a little open house social, so people can meet the candidate, especially you board members, so you can come in, meet them and things like that. And then we'll go into a personnel committee meeting after that with the personnel committee and continue the interview process. But this will be a way you can meet and greet and things like that. The plan is, if possibly after that, according to the bylaws, the personnel committee would then bring, maybe at the next meeting or subsequent meeting, after doing the due diligence, the background check and items such as that, bring a recommendation to the committee and bring them back again for the second time. So August the 22nd at 5 o'clock. 5:30? 5 to 6 is they're gonna have an open house. There may be two candidates show up because there are others that already accepted the petition or withdrew the request or wouldn't answer our calls and things like that, that we're gonna be interviewing, discussing at that time. So that was a report that she asked that I bring to you, and hope that Thursday, August the 22nd, from 5 to 6 will be available for y'all to come and meet the candidates. Even one of these candidates is seeking another job possibly, and he didn't know what that schedule was going to be. It could be one, it could be two. Well, one for certain was excited to come, and the second one, his interview process, and he didn't know what his schedule was at the conference. So we'll let you know when we get to that. Any questions that I can try to?
Well, I thought there's a couple out of state too that might be considered.
And it might be what before, because the thought process was before we fly them in here, with the extent of that, we'd like to interview these to see if there's one of them that stands out significantly, or if it's not, then we would go to the other two, what their thought process was.
And also maybe handle the initial through Skype or something like that, and then.
But these were local and they agreed to come out, to come in there.
The only thing I want to point out is, do you want to approve the treasurer's report?
Does it need to be approved?
Well,
We've
always done
let
it.
it back right there. On the treasurer's report, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Have a motion, second?
I'll second.
By David Drozer. Any comment? All in favor of approving treasurer's report, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That's all I have. Anything else on personnel committee? So August 22nd, 5 o'clock. Executive officer's report, around you on the.
Let me just touch base and bring you up to date. The entrance on the Rancho Grande is about almost complete. They're doing some minor things right now. The company is, but from everything that I've been able to see and what viewed out there, the entrance turned out beautifully. I think the majority of the people out there are quite pleased that they're beginning to see some action being taken regarding the entrance, and they've been told that once the entrance is completed, the roadway will start the process on getting the paperwork and doing all the studies that need to be done on the roadway in order to start the bid process on the roadway. So I think also and later on in the agenda, we'll be discussing that Verizon has finally, accepted the easement on that has been put together through our attorney and Verizon, and they should be doing some processing work to get telephone services to the people that are out there right now. I think there's now that the two last lots that have been sold to exploration and imploration, I think there's just there's one other slot or track out there that is still available, but because of various things that we have pending, we won't be knowing exactly the number of acres that will be available for sale out there. I think on the other process, I think the city, we met with the city and the engineer, and they started the process on the Veterans Park over here regarding the Whittemire situation. I think the city is doing the calculation on getting ready to do the trenching on the sewer connection that needs to be done on that 6-acre tract at the Veterans Park. So I think we're in line with getting that thing done and connect sewer to that piece of property. I think there's been some interest on the back portion where Studio C and the Human Resources Office is presently. There's a tract of property, approximately 9 acres back there, that is being looked at by different people. So they've indicated that they're doing a study right now, and eventually they'll be, if they do decide, they'll be coming in for further information. I think on the other 5-acre tract that where the Whittemires are going to set up their office, I had a call a week ago from a person in Austin that is very interested in possibly purchasing either the 4 or 5 acres that are left in that tract. So I think the individual indicated that he'll be visiting my office very shortly to get additional information, and hopefully we'll be able to get things going in the right direction. Those are the things. Let me mention also that because of the McCoy, today was the soft opening of the McCoy store, but last week was sort of a hassle because we were rushing through with trying to get the street that eventually was impartial agreed upon through the interlocal agreement that was agreed upon several years ago, I believe, in which the city and the FEDC took sole responsibility for developing the street and paying for it. So we eventually, the city did the work on it, and we were responsible for possibly paying all the bills for the materials that we used. We got it completed. We got it, I think, to where everybody is in agreement now, because of this agreement, you know, we had no choice but to go ahead and fulfill that obligation. That's about the extent of the things that are going on right now. Hopefully we can continue going. I think overall, I think all of the programs and everything that is being done by the FEDC we're in the right track. And I think we're accomplishing various things that should have been accomplished a long time ago.
Mr. President, I have a comment, but I'll just share that when we get to item E.
Yeah, some of these things we're gonna be discussing a little bit later on. Any other questions for the interim officer? Now, we're gonna go on to new business. Item A is, according to our bylaws, if a person's gonna be absent, that they can request permission to be excused from that. Mary Helen is out in Austin all week on business, and so she has requested to have an excused absence for this meeting. So this applies to anyone, if you know you're gonna be absent, you can request it according to our bylaws. Any other questions regarding that? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we excuse Mary Helen from the meeting due to business.
Have a motion and a second to excuse Mary Helen, give her an excused absence for the meeting tonight. Is she pending the business matters? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. In regard to B, there's a miscommunications on night. Ms. Wagner thought that the meeting was tomorrow night and did not schedule this, so we're gonna reschedule her to come possibly to a special meeting that we're gonna be calling for Friday. I think, Jason, we're gonna confirm that. So we're gonna pass on B and all. We're gonna go to item C, discussion, consideration, action on proposed 2013-2014 budget.
Okay, before I move on, is it necessary to table something like that? Just do.
We just pass on, take no action.
This is a rough draft of a proposed budget, and I have met with Ram and visiting with this, or visiting about this and these items. And what I did for the most part is, when you look at the detail that we have on the monthly expenses, I just took the expenses that we're seeing there, of course, and projected them out over a 12-month period and came up with these numbers. Now, starting at the top there, the sales tax revenue is really the projected revenue that we'll have this year, okay? Now, initially I had indicated that I would probably set them about 625, or I thought that that would be a good starting place. After visiting with Laura Fagan, she thought we ought to go ahead and just set it at the current rate we're at. Well, you know, that's okay. I don't see a need to do that because, you know, that sales tax revenue could fluctuate over time. We might see a dip in the economy or whatever the case might be. So I always tend to err on the conservative side. So there's two ways to take care of that issue, is don't spend all the money you have. So even if your revenue is not there, if your spending is well below what you take in anyway, you're not going to have a problem. And so we put in the rental of the beer warehouse, meaning the rental income we receive, the senior loan that we have outstanding, that's an annual amount that we would get, comes in monthly, and the estimated bank interest. So you see there the revenue would be established about $695,000. And then we've gone through each of the each of the expenses there for administration. You see there that the first one would be an audit. Second one would be just general accounting costs for standard bookkeeping in the office. Advertising and marketing can be used in a number of different ways, but fuel, service of the vehicle, your bond interest, your bond principal, insurance D&O, that's directors and officers coverage, legal fees. Now, granted, our legal fees has been much higher than that this year, but our hope is that with the operation that we've been running here, we won't see a problem in that moving forward. So I did have it set a little bit lower, but Mr. President over there told me I ought to bump that up maybe just a little bit, and so we did. Office supplies, filing fees, that's just general stuff that showed up on the ledger before. Payroll, you see there a salary for a person, and then by the time you calculate personnel benefits, and this is a real calculation of what it would really cost if we provided that employee medical insurance, and if we provided them the retirement plan that the city employees participate in. Okay, because the retirement plan contribution from the employer is a little over 11%. And then I've been told that that's required by the TMRS as the contribution. So anyway, when you add those numbers, you see you're looking at a package of about 84 to 85,000. We could tweak that some if we needed to. Then you see the payroll taxes is estimated at 5,500. Cell, office phone, training, that could be tweaked as well. Meals for board. It's very seldom do we go places as a board. And I was just basing it off the experience that we had this last year. It says travel meals for the ED, 500. I mean, we could tweak that as well. Website design. Right now we're maintaining a website that is a shop in Floresville site. I don't know how much traffic that site gets, but I really believe that should be a function of the chamber. And we could eliminate possibly one of those sites if we feel that it's not getting traffic. Maybe they can incorporate it into theirs. Because I think the chamber has a pretty decent site from what I recall. So that could be even cut in half if we decided to not continue that site. The cost for the beer warehouse, you see estimated cost for cleaning if we maintain that property in the full year. I know we have the property for sale, but we know that could change any time, but these are the projected costs there. Depot, all we pay there is electric and water bills. We determine paying. At one time, there was talk about a sign that was being proposed for the Lone Oak Business Park. There's a couple of business owners over there. We could address that here. We'll have to discuss that probably in other business in the future, but I know that there were some proposals at one time in that range, and so I went ahead and just put it in there. The Rancho Grande Industrial Park, electric bill, that's estimated based on that home, which to me seems a little high. Because I was basing this, it's $1,500 for a year, but nobody's out there. So, but I just based it on the months that we had incurred so far this year. Engineering, $7,000. If we anticipate more engineering, which we could, then we might ought to bump that number up. Mowing, 4,000, retention ponds. Now, I know that we've talked about a lot of different numbers, in terms of retention ponds, but this number is the approach that we talked about last time that could be negotiating something with property. All right. Road maintenance repair. I know that we're going to have some new roads out there, but until then, there might be some maintenance. Materials have been hauled out before. We've had to cover some potholes. Sign, I think there's probably a need at some point to consider a sign there, to let people know where this place is, what it's for. Veterans Park would be nothing more than mowing. I went ahead and bumped the amount up for the proposed line. I know that that's projected in this year. I wasn't certain if we'd get that expense in this year. So if we don't, then of course it's there for the next year's budget. I know in the past we've contributed to the flags at the Monument Park the last several years. That's what's shown up in the last detail in the past year. Warehouse, that's just one of the buildings we have over there by the beer warehouse location. It's just simply electric bill. Why we have electric bill there, I don't know, because I don't know what the purpose would be.
That's the city's building.
Is it the city building? Well, why are we paying electric bill?
Thank you.
Okay, well,
Cut
anyway.
it off, we'll find out they need it.
You gotta share the wealth, man.
Yeah, well, we share it all right. Okay, total expenses. Okay, so if we brought in the cash that we're talking about in terms of the revenue there, now keep in mind, This is not with any projections of sold properties or anything. We're basing a budget on income that we can project, okay? And so you see there that there's potential of about $286,000 going into the surplus, meaning not spending all the money that we have, putting it aside in reserve to prepare for future projects. After we take care of the McCoy's project, we're probably, that 1.1 million is probably a pretty good estimate for where we'll stand in cash reserves in the real near future. If we were able to take that surplus, add it to cash reserves, you see that number there. And then the next biggest project we're looking at is the roads to the industrial park. I put that estimate there. I think that's very fair. So the hope would be is that when we're all said and done, if we pay cash for those roads, that we would still have almost a year's worth of reserves in the bank.
Don't you think that's kind of minimum really for where we need to be to?
Well, I think that that's probably minimal because you just never know what the next, you know,
What
the future
the
holds.
next stock ended release?
Yeah. What the next fall candidate looks like.
Linda,
Okay, so let's, this is the time to discuss this. Let me talk a little bit about a timeline. The goal would be is that we probably take this to budget workshop August 22nd of the city's workshop. So I would be, my hope is that I can take it to that workshop, all right? We have a meeting September 8th, which is the second week in September. The city's goal is to approve all budgets September 12th, which is that Thursday. So literally, we can tweak this, do what we need to do, make amendments now, propose that to the city, make sure they're informed at August 22nd meeting, and then have literally one meeting that we would be able to approve it, our final draft, and then take it for final approval to the city on the 12th. So that's the timeline. Okay, fire away. Tear it up, Andy.
I don't think I have a whole lot. We kind of been working on that. I'm going to give back comments on the payroll and all. We have talked about a budget for the new ED less than that. So part of this would be the RAM would probably continue over for a period of time, 2 weeks to a month or something to help with the transaction. So you see that number is a little bit higher than we actually budgeted, but that's the reason that the web design and maintenance. Do you know if we're under a contract if we on that one? On the second page, the engineering, we're seeing the bill come in for the roads and all.
Right.
And I think it can be substantially more than that.
Actually, before, I was going to bump that up to at least 15.
Okay.
And I failed to do it when I got back. So.
No problem. Instead of calling that retention pond, why don't we call that water control?
Okay.
Because if we do have to go to retention pond, if y'all remember, those retention ponds were about $695,000 if we end up having to go that way. So let's just call that water control, and that's the best thing. He spent some time and all, and I really, and just because it's budgeted, then late, doesn't mean we have to spend it in here if we end up needing to conserve it for retention ponds.
Would you suggest that we probably make these tweaks and then do our final approval in September?
Or we could approve it subject to those tweaks being made tonight. It's just whatever the committee desires.
Well, we've only got, does anybody else have any suggestions?
May have a little more clarity on some of these ideas as we go a little further down the road versus putting it all tonight. There's a tit for tat, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
You're gonna have a more solid number.
Right. I think my thought would be just get it on for final approval, you know, probably for the September meeting.
What we could do, see, the meeting that the city will have will be on the
12th, right?
The 12th is when they meet. See, we're gonna meet on the 8th. As long as it's put on the agenda.
Right.
And we approve it on the 8th, we'll be all right.
Well, then that way, if any of you have something that you say, because really, the whole point here is, this is the start. Everybody needs to be an independent thinker and think about, you know, well, wait a minute, we forgot about this, or we need to consider this, and so.
Personally, it'd be nice to take where we spent with this report, go back, and if we have that time and luxury, I prefer us to table it tonight, compare them, and then come back on the 8th and do the final.
Right.
We got stuff for sale, we got other things that are pending, we're gonna have I think a more solid information in the near future.
Well, there you go. So that's first shot at it. And if you have suggestions, let me know. We'll go from there.
May I have somebody want to make a motion to table this until the next meeting for the final consideration and action?
Yeah, I make a motion to table this until the next consideration action.
I have a motion to table the 2013-2000 budget report till the next meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any other further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor of tabling this for further consideration at the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
September 8th is our EDC meeting, and then the 12th would be the city council meeting. The city council meeting's the 12th.
The 8th is a Sunday, isn't it?
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong. That was
It is
September,
Sunday.
okay, so it'll be the 9th.
9th.
Will they give us enough time around?
Well, we worked on Sundays before, so.
I know.
They'll give us enough time.
You have to church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll give us enough time. As long as we have it, you know,
24 hours?
to where they will have it, you know, that we're gonna present the budget to them.
Yeah, we'll have to get it before they go to the meeting.
That'll be all right.
With everyone's permission, I would like to move item N up to this time and let our gentleman do the presentation, discuss the presentation, Oakwell Ventures on proposed development of Old Wilson County Hospital. Is there any opposition to that?
Not at all.
If not, I'll let you gentlemen have the floor if you'd like to step up, or you all wait till 10 o'clock tonight.
Let me say first, thanks very much for moving this up. You guys have a long agenda. And I'll try to put some of the introductory comments pretty briefly. Rick is an architect and I'm a commercial broker from San Antonio. We are not developers. But a long time ago, it seems like, when the hospital was vacant, we put it under contract, and we put it under contract with a developer. And so Rick was gonna do the architecture, I was gonna do the brokers, and the developer's gonna remodel it and do all that kind of work. And the developer immediately dropped out and said, why don't you boys just do this yourself? Well, we've worked in Floresville for a decade, I don't know if you know that or not, but we know y'all well and we love the town, so we thought, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Didn't realize how complicated it would be to get it under, to find a developer to take on the task. So we have a developer, he's interested in buying it, and unfortunately, he had a meeting with your previous city manager, so this all is kind of backwards the way we've done it. But what I've done is bring you a letter, and I'd like to discuss what he's looking for in the concept of what we're doing. And Rick can tell you a little bit, I think, about, but maybe to tell you a little bit about the concept of the remodeling of the hospital into a hotel. And I brought you a letter asking for, and if I could, I'll introduce those briefly, and then I guess we can just take questions.
The regular meeting was in early July.
There's a program called 380 under the Texas Code. Well, in the first place, the potential buyer is a man named Busby. He's a long-time, very experienced, very reputable developer. He's done some major projects in San Antonio. One of the main ones you would probably all know is he's redeveloped the old Fort Sam Houston Hospital, BAMC, and all those kind of things into office buildings. and he has a long background with some major companies. He's done work in other cities, and one of the first things he started doing, and unfortunately Rick and I are not exactly privy to the numbers, because he got a contractor. We got a contractor originally to get some numbers together. He has his own contractor come down, and the first thing we started hearing was, it's gonna cost so much money to redo the project and do this and do that. He'd like to meet with the city and talk to them about a couple of programs. Well, he's going to, this was not necessarily the way we would have done it, he's going to completely replumb the hospital building, put in all new air conditioning, all new wiring. So all of those things are gonna add up. He's gonna spend around $6 million in his current budget. So, the first thing he talked to us about was reducing the purchase price, which that's probably coming, but, we're ready for that. But he's still, considerably out of balance, over his projections. So, one of the things he talked about was, getting an agreement, a 380 agreement. And if I've never done this. I mean, this was a new one on me. Mr. Joslin knew about it. If I understand it correctly, the city or the entity, whoever it will be, agrees to give back the sales taxes produced through that particular project. And when I first read his letter, it sounded like he wanted all of the sales taxes for Floresville, but that's not his plan. He wants to talk about negotiating an agreement whereby any sales taxes, like room rent, food, those kind of things, the sales taxes themselves would come back to the development group. And the other is to ask for a tax abatement from the city and county, and he's a better developer than some I've worked with. Part of his proposal is he'd continue to pay the taxes that are being paid now. So he wouldn't be in a loss position, and his concept is that neither of these two programs would cause the city of Floresville any loss of income, and you wouldn't have to come out of any current funds with any money. It's simply a matter, a mechanism where in the future, he'd be able to recoup some funds to help make the overall project.
But he's speaking of just hotel, motel tax, correct?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, that it would only be from this project. I want to make sure you think. He has a man working with him, a man named Greg Calloway, who's developed this brochure. And the basics of it, I mean, I had to pass this around or whatever. The basics of it are, the hospital was easy in a sense to redo. We looked at a plan for a long time of redoing the patient rooms as rooms. The part where they did the surgeries there, they turned those into offices, and they keep the food service. And we tried, and I've tried marketing at the oil and gas companies for a year. That would be the perfect situation for one company. They could come and have office space, residential space, and food services. But to date, I haven't found that company. So the current plan is to turn most of the building into residential rooms. Keep the food service, and that would, of course, be a great benefit to any of the people who are living in the hotel. Have food service, and the idea is they can pick up lunch when they leave in the morning. They can pick up lunches, have them on site wherever they work, come back at night, have dinner service, and put some barbecue tables outside, beautify the outside with some landscaping, put in hot tubs, which would, in my mind, be a great benefit if I lived there. And that's the basic concept plan. There wouldn't be anything major difference as far as from the city's point of view. They're going to keep the building. That's intact. And the contractor said the first thing I'd do is get rid of the crematorium. Probably make everybody happier. So that's an easy part of it. But that's just to introduce. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Mr. Busby couldn't be here because he's been traveling around the state. He's working on a big project in the valley. Do you know the name of that town? Very small town, and he's putting a big retail center in there with an HEB and all kinds of stuff. And the only way you can do projects like that, unfortunately, is by using that 380 funding. And so he's pretty attuned to that, and he should come down anytime and visit with me. I've rewritten the letter. Our other letter, unfortunately, was written to Mr. Joslin, which I thought was inappropriate. So I rewrote that letter just for Mark.
Now then, thank you very much for coming. Look forward to something happening in that hospital. Naturally, you understand that FEDC doesn't approve tax abatement.
No, of course, that's what I say. And this is a little complicated. He wrote the letter originally to Mr. Joslin to introduce the whole deal. We normally write a letter to the city, to the county, to the EDC, and the city manager, you know. So we'd be glad to do what you'd like us to do next. That's just where we work for right now.
I
But
think
you're not asking anything of FEDC.
part of Mr. Chandler's deal was that he drafted a letter in July, and nothing happened because it was left on someone's desk. So he wanted to come introduce himself and kind of step forward and say, I'm asking you for nothing, but would like to look for support from somebody because they've gotten nothing back, like no response, no anything. So that was kind of and actually it was my recommendation when he called to come and introduce yourself.
Yeah, which we
So here I
appreciate.
am.
Like I say, I worked with Jesse since, Rick and I have worked with Jesse since 2000. And Rick's firm, don't take this badly, was instrumental in helping design River Bend. We didn't know we had some crazy people, developers. But, so Rick, and as often happens, Rick got the engineering company involved. So we were very involved in those days. And I was going to be selling the land from River Bend to home builders. But Mr. Hawkins took a different turn. And,
No comment.
I wouldn't put that in your resume.
no. And then he brought his son.
One of the questions I'm gonna ask, though, anytime you start talking about tax abatements or things like that, is sometimes if you're going in, you're gonna be competing with the different entities that's already in town, the apartments, the hotels, and things like that. What is the offsetting factor to mitigate that? Is you're gonna be competing now with people that went in without Section 380s or any other kind of tax abatement? What's the justification?
I fully agree with that. I think the main thing is they're gonna take an old building in town and rehab it. Frankly, I was completely surprised when he got his construction numbers. The contractor that I got, we didn't get that high. But the original plan we were working under was to sort of use the plumbing, sort of use the building. I mean, they're gonna take all the windows out of the building, make them all look the same with double pane insulated windows. So in that sense, the building will look better than it does now. So they just got a different concept plan, and the numbers just got to be, I tell you, Mr. Busby's argument for 2 months now has been, why don't I just build a new building? Well, one reason is he can use this building, and we think he can be open a little earlier. 2, we love the building because we've been working it for a year now.
Well, there's a lot of liabilities with the building as it sits right now. It's deteriorating very rapidly. It needs to be redeveloped to be something, and this is, at this point, highest and best use for the property. It can generate a lot of other activity in the area as well.
There was a study done, I'm an old-time industrial broker. There was a study done years ago that you may have heard of in some city like Philadelphia or somewhere. And the sad fact is we've seen it happen in the hospital. The first time I went in that building, there was one graffiti and it was like a little doodle kind of thing on the wall. The next time I went down, there were 2 or 3 of them. And then there was more window glass broken. And what they did in this big city, on purpose in an old building, just sitting there, nothing happened. They broke out a window pane, big window pane. And then they broke out another one a couple of days later. And that got the young kids and people to start breaking that one. And then the building just got completely trashed. And unfortunately now, all over the inside of that building is graffiti. And now it's not the nice words. And those things happen.
I don't know who owns the property now. Has demolition been considered? Because really, it's not a bad spot. It's a great spot, and it might make sense.
That building is built just about like a jail. It's solid concrete. It has a concrete roof. It's hard to imagine that building has almost 100 concrete pier columns and bell footings under it. It is well built.
It was originally designed as, I've got the original plans on the building. It was designed for a 4-story structure.
Yeah, so
it's pretty solid.
if you wanted a good location to build a hotel, you could buy the property right across the street. And literally, that's the competing problem in this case.
Well,
Building a new
part
hotel.
of his incentive is to keep getting quickly. He can have the first phase rental rooms ready within 120 days or so. Once we get started in the basement, we can move through the project. So it's a big incentive for him to be able to do that, turn the building around and property.
Any other questions for the gentleman?
One point is that, the way I understand it, and I'll correct me if I'm wrong, on this hotel tax, if you lease to a single tenant that stays over, or be a single tenant, or someone that stays over 30 days, you collect on hotel tax, correct?
That is the way the law is written, and they circumvent it, yeah.
But, so if this person were to do this project and lease it to a single tenant, or just more than likely the possibility, you'd be giving them back 100% of that.
Well, you might be doing that, but you've got all these other
Oh, there's other
customers out there, and we got just a new Park Patterson that's putting in 250 apartments out there. You're competing against with all them, and you're attracting to them. So there gotta be somewhere it's fair, that it's not the detriment of the people that went in without the rent, that's all I'm
Exactly.
saying. Right. If it's all one-sided, it's not a good deal.
I mean, it can't be one-sided.
Well, there's no doubt, we'd like to see the building.
Oh, yeah.
And there may be some modification, meeting in the middle, or something like that, so it's not a competitive advantage for one over our existing customers to do. But I think it's something that's workable. That's the thing that's great.
But that's a valid point, because in San Antonio, what we hear all the time is giving a new company come in town, tax abatement and all that, and the companies in town are paying the full load. But it's just always the driver to get new people, new employment, new blah, blah, blah. It's a tough
And if
call.
this was Halliburton,
Well,
by competing, it would be a
believe
lot
me, if I
different.
can get Halliburton in that hospital, I will call you guys up. That is the current marketing plan, and that's what Mr. Callaway is doing with that flyer, is trying to lease the building to a one company. And if they do that, that answers a number of questions. The 380 money wouldn't work, or at least you wouldn't be paying any for no telling when. And it would take the whole, it would occupy most of the building. And that would be the goal. The trouble is, what Rick and I have argued from day one is that you need the building open to get that kind of tenant. To get the building open, you need the $6 million.